In the early hours of October 4th, 1986, a seemingly random and inexplicable event occurred on the streets of New York City, one that would become a piece of the media's collective folklore. Dan Rather, the respected CBS News anchor, was on his way to work when he found himself confronted by a man who appeared out of nowhere, shouting, "What's the frequency, Kenneth?" a phrase that would reverberate for years to come. With no explanation, the man then struck Rather, leaving him disoriented but largely unharmed.
Good evening. This is the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather reporting.
The question, simple yet bizarre, seemed to hang in the air, as though there were a deeper significance to it. What could it mean, and why had it been aimed at Rather, the man behind the anchor desk of one of the most powerful news programs in the country? In the absence of answers, the media scrambled to decode the message, or lack thereof, as the mystery began to take on a life of its own. Rather's account of the attack was startlingly straightforward, though it was clear he was as baffled by the incident as anyone. He described being approached by a man on the street who aggressively grabbed his jacket and began shouting, "What's the frequency, Kenneth?" again and again. At first, Rather thought it was some sort of joke, an odd prank perhaps, but the assault that followed quickly erased any possibility of humor. The man's words were sharp, insistent, and filled with a palpable urgency that left Rather confused and somewhat shaken. The unexpected violence and the stranger's relentless question, however, didn't immediately give rise to any clarity. Instead, Rather was left with only two things: his bruises and the haunting question that had no clear answer, one that would soon captivate the public's imagination. The mystery deepened with each passing day, as no one, including Rather himself, had any idea what the phrase meant, or why it had been directed at him. Once the story hit the airwaves, the media, ever eager to feed the public's insatiable appetite for strange occurrences, quickly seized on the bizarre nature of the attack. What had initially seemed like an isolated incident soon became a full-blown cultural enigma. "What's the frequency, Kenneth?" became a phrase that was repeated ad nauseum in the press, but its meaning remained as elusive as the shadowy figure who had spoken it. Headlines, articles, and talk shows buzzed with speculation, and each theory seemed to be wilder than the last. Some suggested that the phrase had something to do with television signals or frequencies, an obscure reference to the technical side of media broadcasting. Others theorized that it was a coded message, a secret plea for help, or a question about the broader power structures of the media. The press had no shortage of theories, but none could explain the underlying mystery, and as the story grew, so too did the public's obsession with solving it. As the mystery unfolded, a number of competing theories began to surface, each one attempting to unravel the significance of the cryptic phrase. Perhaps Tager, the assailant, was attempting to communicate a deeper frustration with the control of information. Some believed the question could have been a critique of the media's role in shaping public perception, hinting at a desire for transparency in a world of manufactured truths. Other theories suggested that Rather, as a prominent figure in American media, might have been specifically chosen because of his association with the networks that controlled such frequencies. But the more the public speculated, the less certain anyone became. Theories ranged from psychological breakdowns to conspiracy theories, each one offering a new interpretation of what's the frequency, Kenneth, might mean. The phrase quickly became an object of fascination for the public, its mystery as tantalizing as it was perplexing. Every mention of "What's the frequency, Kenneth?" sparked new waves of questions. Was it part of an elaborate prank, a desperate cry for help from someone lost in the noise of society? Or perhaps a more sinister comment on the power of the media and the unseen forces that shape public opinion? The question began to morph, taking on a life of its own, as people tried to force meaning into what, at first glance, seemed to be nothing more than an absurd utterance. There was something captivating about the randomness of it all, the lack of any clear explanation, and yet, the almost conspiratorial energy that surrounded the phrase. It was a riddle without an answer, and that in itself made it all the more compelling. People couldn't help but wonder what lay behind those words, if anything at all. In the months and years that followed, law enforcement continued to search for the man who had attacked R.E.M. Despite efforts to track him down, the identity of the assailant remained a mystery for some time. But as often happens in such strange cases, the resolution came unexpectedly. In 1994, William Tager, a man with a history of mental illness and paranoia, was arrested for the murder of a television technician. Tager was eventually linked to the 1986 assault on R.E.M, and he confirmed that the attack had been part of his obsession with media frequencies. Tager believed that the media, particularly broadcasters like R.E.M, were somehow controlling the airwaves and influencing the world through these invisible frequencies. In his distorted view of reality, the phrase, "What's the frequency, Kenneth?" was not a random outburst, but a question that demanded an answer from R.E.M, whom he saw as part of the conspiracy. This revelation shed light on Tager's fractured mental state, but also gave the question its first semblance of meaning. When examining Tager's actions, it becomes clear that the attack was not just a random outburst, but the result of a deeply disturbed mind. Experts suggest that his obsession with media frequencies could have been a manifestation of a broader mental breakdown, one in which Tager sought to make sense of a world that seemed to be slipping away from him. His fixation on the media and the idea of unseen forces controlling communication may have been his way of grappling with feelings of alienation and paranoia. For Tager, the frequencies of radio and television weren't just technical signals. They were a metaphor for the invisible forces that he believed were manipulating reality itself. The question he asked R.E.M, "What's the frequency, Kenneth?" was, in his mind, an attempt to unlock the hidden truth, a desperate plea for answers to the chaos that consumed his thoughts. In this light, the phrase becomes less about the media and more about Tager's personal unraveling. Despite the eventual identification of Tager as the assailant, the phrase, "What's the frequency, Kenneth?" endured in the public consciousness. It became a symbol of confusion, disillusionment, and the blurred lines between reality and perception. In 1994, R.E.M released their hit song, "What's the Frequency, Kenneth?", which, while not directly about the incident, reflected the same sense of frustration with the media and the disorienting nature of modern life. The song's success brought the phrase back into the spotlight, cementing its place as a cultural touchstone. Over time, it evolved beyond its initial association with the attack on R.E.M, becoming shorthand for any situation where meaning seemed elusive, or where the truth was obscured by layers of distortion. The phrase had grown beyond its origins, representing a broader commentary on the way we consume information in an age of endless media. While the case itself may have been solved, the legacy of "What's the frequency, Kenneth?" remains an open-ended puzzle. the exact reasons for Tager's actions and the true significance of the phrase continue to be debated by those who find themselves drawn to the enigma. Was Tager simply a madman, or was he tapping into something larger? His obsession with media frequencies raises unsettling questions about the way information is transmitted and manipulated, and whether we are all, in some way, victims of the very systems that control what we see and hear. In that sense, the mystery isn't just about Tager or Rather. It's about the nature of communication itself. As long as questions remain unanswered, the story will continue to captivate, leaving us to wonder whether we, too, are searching for answers to a frequency that's just beyond our reach. Ultimately, what's the frequency, Kenneth, may never fully reveal its secrets. Perhaps that's what makes it so compelling. A question without a definitive answer, floating in the air like a riddle we can never quite solve. While Tager's motivations have been explored, the deeper layers of the mystery, the cultural significance, the psychological implications, and the way it continues to echo in our minds, remain a subject of intrigue. Some mysteries, no matter how much we try to untangle them, are destined to remain unsolved. And in the case of what's the frequency, Kenneth, that lack of resolution is what ensures its place in history, continuing to spark curiosity and discussion long after the incident itself has faded from memory. Thank you for joining me today as we unraveled this intriguing mystery. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe for more videos like this. This has been the Phantom Files, and remember to stay curious, stay vigilant, and always question what is lurking in the shadows.